Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Generative AI Summit. My name is Vicki Lim with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I introduce our esteemed panel moderator for this session. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today. At any time during the event, you can visit those virtual booths from the main agenda page. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our panel moderator, Tolgai Kizilma, PhD and Director of MS in Cybersecurity Program at the Dominican University of California. We are so excited to have Tolgai and our panelists with us for a presentation titled Using AI to Lower Costs, Concrete Examples and Real Talk. Welcome, Tolgai, and over to you.
Well, thank you, Vicki. It's always a pleasure to be part of these exciting conversations. And so I'm very excited to be part of it. So anyway, my name is Tolgai. Again, it's like a short guy. I'm not that tall, but that's the pronunciation. Happy to connect with you on social media as well. So we have two distinguished guests today. Why don't we have them introduce themselves? Chris, why don't we start with you first?
Sure. Thanks, Tolgai. Appreciate it. Chris Zimmerman. I am the CIO and CISO for Fleet Farm. Fleet Farm is a retail organization in the Midwest United States. We operate in 5 different states, and I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about actual concrete examples of AI. So often I come to these conferences and we talk about a lot of theory, but having concrete examples and being able to share with peers is really exciting for me.
Great. Shravan?
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. This is Shravan Kasarla. I'm currently working as a board of advisor for 2 of the startups. One is a Gigso and another is Model. And 2 of them are in the ML and the AI platform space, as well as I'm on the board of directors for a consortium which is trying to bring in a lot of AI companies and innovation from Israel to US. So that's been my current gig, but previously I was chief data officer for almost 5 years at Thrivent, and another 8 years or so with Fidelity Investments in the data and data science and architecture.
Great. Thank you. So before we start, I just want to also, set the stage. I know we talk about AI and, in general trends, but lately the topics are around more Gen AI. So we have that, cross between AI, Gen AI, and just to kind of set the stage, Gen AI is really, the difference is allowing new content creation. AI has been there for the past about 50, 60 years. So just want to make sure when we say AI or Gen AI, some users kind of makes the distinction, but just make sure we are on the same page. So let's start with our first question, Shravan. So talking about use cases. What do you think is the most innovative use case of AI, Gen AI that you've seen for IT teams implementing, and how did it enhance the operational efficiencies and lowering cost?
Yeah, thank you, Tolgai. I think especially the large language models as they have come out, right, which is what generative component of the AI has started, definitely has potential to generate any type of content, and they all started with the text initially, and now we are seeing a lot of multimodal content, not only content generation, but also content ingestion, also in a number of ways. So with that, I think the amount of use cases which are going on right now are more successful, are many companies have been able to do is, one is, of course, code generation. Our engineers and developers loved it right from the get-go, especially beginners and mid-level ones are really seeing this to be a great tool to generate the code and really get the business logic in code generation. Obviously, a lot of content generation itself by the nature of the GPT being the generative pre-programmed transformer. So that's obviously content generation for document generation, marketing content generation, creative content generation. I think that's another one. But the one that which organizations are most using is, yes, some of the content generation on the marketing side, but significantly on search and summarization. So most people are really using this capability of, yes, ingesting real-time data. So for instance, in the investment side, portfolio managers need to make a decision based on how the market moment is happening. lot of news getting published and all that. Many research platforms has to churn through that and will provide some, let's call it some of the news patterns that which are important for them. But what generative AI is able to do is quickly summarize the real-time news coming in and actually identify the levers that they need to consider from an investment perspective. That's one example of that. We can definitely go into more details. And of course, smart chatbots are the ones that which are, I think chatbots have been around, which have been very limited, useful, but very limited because they're pre-programmed for what they were supposed to do. I think we are seeing much better expansion, but in a financial services, I'm happy to go into more details and examples afterwards.
So as I think about the innovation side of AI, it really starts with that innovation piece. And so what I often will challenge my teams with is to understand innovation and how do we innovate quickly, because oftentimes what happens is, you know, we're as IT individuals, we tend to be black and white, and how do we get this, you know, the minimal viable requirements out as soon as possible. But how do we fail as fast as possible to be innovative? And that's one of the tenets that we can bring into AI as well. How do we figure out what we want to accomplish, see if that's even viable to do very quickly before we get into this large innovation session, if you will, where we're trying to get all of the different variables built out. So that's one of the things I just want to remind people of as we talk about innovation. It's really that important speed factor that comes into play. But specifically to this question, as I think about different industries, and Shravan did a great job in talking about some very specific things across different industries. As I think about different industries, for example, in retail, as I think about AI, how do we service the customer quickly? So you'll see companies like Tractor Supply and some other companies starting to use almost like that chatbot, but for voice to the sales associates so that they can then serve the customers. You know, what aisle is the shovel in, or does this particular mug come in blue and black because I see it in green? So that's one way that I see it in the retail space. In logistics, you know, you've got some of those innovations where putting things away in the warehouse in a specific spot, or picking it is pick to light, for example, picking in specific spots in their particular waves. That's an important innovation that's coming and has been there for the warehousing side. But then I think about, you know, as you think about it further out, and you think of the scientific community and how do we get to clinical trials faster? You know, AI can really help us to understand how we get to those clinical trials and do those things that used to take us maybe months or years as a society, how we can do those faster. I think that's going to result in more medicines being available in the future as they come through clinical trials. And so although people are concerned about AI taking jobs, I suspect that something like that is actually going to create more jobs, because there's just going to be more throughput and more medicines available. So those are some of the things that I think about as I think about concrete examples of innovation in AI today.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think those are really.
Chris.
Anything you want to add? Sorry, you were going to say something? Or?
Yeah, just one thing, Chris. A great example about the clinical trials, right? I mean, again, I'm in Boston area where there is a significant amount of pharmaceutical and also the companies that which are in the clinical data space. To your point, I think synthetic data generation and not scenario planning, but scenario creations at a much faster pace, and for many years, right? I mean, years out planning and multiple scenario planning. I think that's what they're talking about, especially from a pharmaceutical and the drug discovery side, that yes, it's fundamentally not discovering any drugs, but it's making the process, the CROs that which used to take years together, now cutting down into months and less than a year. Of course, there is still a regulatory process they have to go through, but I think these are great innovations we have yet to see within the healthcare and the drug discovery.
Definitely, all good points. So I think from what I see, it's really reducing timelines. I think that's really area, and then there's that conversational piece. So I look at it from a content creation, content analysis, that conversational piece, interaction, engagement, and as well as, on the very technical, like coding, right? The technical hands-on program. So those are the 4 buckets I see, but kind of taking all these to a high level business impact, from a business impact perspective, we talked about, the value generation, the risk, the compliance, and the use of resources. So if you kind of look at it from that perspective, what do you think are the most significant ways where organizations can take this and apply, and what might be those business outcomes, again, from a value, risk optimization, use of resources, and again, laws, regulations, compliance. So within those bigger picture, what do you think the business outcome?
Yeah. So as I think about that, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've really heard a lot about, especially generative AI and the uses that it could have in the future. And a lot of it's been theoretical up to now. And the challenge has been for us as IT practitioners is how do we bring those to fruition? Because the boardrooms are talking about it. People want to talk about it with us, but there's not a lot of great examples per industry that are coming out yet. I think that they are on their way, that's for sure. But it's been a challenge over the last 12 to 18 months to have those conversations. I think the real value in the near future is going to be, as we described with some of these that we've already talked about, is bringing that to the customer. That's going to be where the value generation is, because now you can have that differentiation of your particular business from the other businesses that are in your industry. So bringing that customer first and customer centric is going to be really important. We've seen a lot with the back office so far. Siobhan talked about the chat bots and things like that. I see that there's going to be a lot of I don't want to call it waste, but a lot of synergy within the back office, if you will, where we're going to be able to have people working with chat agents and be able to really reduce the amount of time that people are taking to do tasks and performing tasks, and therefore we're going to be more optimized in the future. That's kind of where I see it, the significant ways that I've seen it so far.
Yeah, Chris, I think those are some great examples. I know the innovation from just the content creation or analysis and the any type of scenario planning to, I think agent AI or agentic AI is definitely coming up. So we'll talk in the next part of this segment. But there are a few more examples. I want concrete examples in the financial industry. I mean, I'm focusing a bit on the financial industry because of my background. Hopefully that is good. But there are a few companies which are of a good mention, right? See, the investments, especially on the trading side, algorithmic trading existed, which was classical AI. Okay, so the optimization of trading to time it, get the right price, get the maximum return for that one, that has been in place for a long time. But now companies like platforms like Wealthfront and Betterment started using AI to generate custom portfolios, which dynamically adjust based on the market condition. Sure enough, they're not fully deployed out, but they have started offering these kind of options for people who are ready to use. That's a good example of one of them, right? And of course, the agents that we talked about, customer service agents, like whether it's Bank of America's Erica or JP Morgan Chase's Coin, they are improving continuously. I think they were very basic when they started even a few years ago, but we started increasing. So that's where the chatbot sitting behind, making the natural language processing, both the agent's capacity to receive that information, but also being able to come back with. I think they're making a significant amount of improvements within that. I mean, there are other companies, a couple of quick examples in the financial plans, like automated or personalized financial plans, like Clio and Digit are a couple of platforms that we've started actually generating these things. Are they perfect today? No, but are they cutting down? Are they providing that opportunity and applying that ability of generation of the content? I think this will only improve matter of time. It's not a question of if these will be viable, Question is how fast they will be very dependable.
Thank you. So next question, I think, is a very loaded question. Might be the most important part, I guess. So it's good that we talk about the value, innovation, all those things, but it's not free. There are issues and challenges we have to overcome. So what do you think are the top challenges for business IT leaders when applying these solutions and AI, Gen AI, and how can these challenges be overcome? And again, the challenges around data, model, privacy, security, risk, right? How you get value out of it. So it's very overall. But let's talk about these because I think this is really important. Shravan.
Thank you, Tolga. I think challenges. What challenges? I mean, large language models are ruling the world. There is science fiction is real, right? Absolutely. I think the opportunity and definitely the boards think like, what is our generative AI strategy? Why are we not actually making a lot of new products and innovation with that? I think the biggest challenge, let me start with the challenge from expectations. So one is there are hyped up expectations about what generative AI can do today. Yes, what tech companies are talking about, then the LLM creators are talking about, is futuristic in a controlled environment, what they can do, versus what in a realistic enterprise with enterprise data, what they can do. So I think that's number one is the, let's call it hyped up expectations, number one. Number two, of course, we continue to be that initially the first, let's call it the late 2022 to early 2023, early adopters that who went with that recognized hallucinations come back to bite them. When they deployed this in front of the customers, not just internal use cases. So what is, I think, again, GPT being the pre-trained, right? The component of pre-trained against a set of corpus of data, and how they've been prepared, how they've been labeled, and how they've been understood and interpreted by the model. I think that it continues to evolve, and you can see that, as for instance, if I take ChatGPT and the Omni has improved that significantly, but they still generate confidently wrong answers. So that is another challenge I see from the models. Now let's go to the enterprises. Skill set and the data readiness of the data environments. Yes, if you want to train this against your own environments, I mean, just RAG itself takes a lot of skill set within the organization to do. Vectorization needs to be a new skill that people need to learn. Labeling and making data to be understood by the model. So these are all continues to be the challenge. Tolga, you are in the security and information security side. Of course, privacy and security continues to be concerns because the I mean, bad actors also have this capability that they could unleash against us. So I think there are a gamut of problems, but I want to stay with the problems of adoption right now, and then we'll go into the security and privacy and the outside threats afterwards.
Thank you.
Shravan, you make a great point. As I think about this, I almost look at it linear. Today, and then let's say a couple of years out, and then farther out from that. And you really touched on one of the big ones that I'm trying to work hard with my department on is preparation for that data. Because if the data, again, the garbage in, garbage out, if the data isn't proper for AI, then how can we expect the results that we're hearing from the futurists today? The board is just going to be very disappointed in the results. But the challenge we have with cleansing the data classification, whatever it may be, is how do you prepare that data for something that you don't necessarily know the outcomes for today, because we're still talking about what AI can do in the future. So there is that challenge. I think IT departments across the globe really have to look at that data cleansing, that data classification, to make sure that they've got some sort of structured data as much as possible, so that it is ready for whatever the innovation that comes in the future. The one that I've been wrestling with the most as I talk about IT departments and really that corporate IT or that enterprise IT is what's the future of enterprise IT? So if we fast forward and now we're in the AI agent world, and I've got my marketing department, my HR department, whoever it may be, they really have an agent who can do that coding for them, which has traditionally been in corporate IT. So me as a leader in corporate IT, I lose a lot of that control, because now I've got the shadow IT organizations of the past. That's just the magnitude is just huge on that. But we have to embrace that as well. That can't be just something we try to stick our head in the sand on, and we hope that it's going to go away, or we try to control it as much as possible. I think we need to enable the business units to be able to take the responsibility, through policies and procedures, and really give them guardrails around what they can and can't do in this particular realm, because it's going to be really, really interesting in the future for these corporate IT organizations. What is our place, and where do we fit? How do we help the organization grow? I think that's going to be one of the big challenges. So again, as I look at that timetable, the data, the policies, to make sure that we've got that governance that's going to be over AI and over the data specifically, because that's going to be so important. And really embracing that culture change that's going to be coming, and has already started. And then just the last thing that I think of is that speed market. Again, I talked about earlier, making sure that we understand how are we going to fail quickly, how are we going to prove out we've got something that we want to go accomplish. How do we prove that out very, very quickly, so that we're not building the Cadillac? We can start off with the Ford, let's say, and really work our way from the Ford up to the Cadillac over time, so that speed to innovation is just going to increase greatly. And so we're really going to have to think about that as organizations, and how do we do that quickly while achieving the business goals.
Yeah. So a couple of things you mentioned there, I think very important. I'm just going to touch on Sherwan's the expectation. I think that's very important, because we do this because there's this value, right? The return on investment. So I think that the setting expectations is important. That from a business perspective, it's not easy to come up with that return on investment calculations and what that means for the enterprise, for the stakeholders. So that's really important in terms of the setting the expectations realistically, KPIs, KRIs, all those things. And of course, all these things we're discussing, to be honest, at a high level, we can just ask ChatGPT or Gen AI, and we can come up with the list, right? What are the challenges? What are the solutions? But I really think, again, at a high level, the issues are around data, issues around the cultural elements, change, right? Ethical use of AI, biases, those type of things. Of course, there's security, privacy risk, and integration with the existing infrastructure, how you kind of get the value out of it. But I really think, even though how you address these individual pieces it really, I think, from my perspective, the governance element is important. Whether you do the data governance, there's the cultural element, how you start the process, that step-by-step baby steps. So establishing that governance structure, I think, is very important as a starting point, because most organizations don't know where to start. That there's that reliance on vendors, right? Because they're the ones doing the most of the work. And of course, the education and awareness piece, right, for the decision makers, so that they know what to ask, the right questions to ask, right? So that they know they're going in the right direction. So all these things, I think, need to be discussed. But again, I think governance, education, and awareness, I think, is key for us to address these challenges and then move forward and create that value for the organization, for the stakeholders, and you get the best out of this new opportunity.
Right.
So with that,
go
ahead.
Olga, if I may add, I know Chris brought up a great point about, hey, shadow IT, or what is the role of enterprise IT going to be, and how it is evolving, right? I think we have seen, Chris, I think IT started to be that IT was really individually with each of the businesses, got into corporate or enterprise ITs, and then started dividing, and then shadow IT is created. I think this evolution of operating model org structures are going to go on. But I think one thing is sure, right? What LLMs have done. Why is AI being talked so much in the last 2 years exactly, right? It's in the last October, 2022 October is when this got, September when it got released. Democratization. It's the I think what they lowered is the bar to use this one. Anybody, I think, I think one of the leaders that I admire has said it. The future is of the people who ask questions, not have answers. So the question is, I think that's how they made it. If you can ask good questions and if you're able to interact with it, now you can do anything. Yes, can every person who doesn't know programming language, can they go and now develop and deploy enterprise class IT systems? No, but can they do the work that they need to do very quickly? Yes. I think that barrier being down, Tolga, I think you talked about education, you talked about awareness. I think that empowerment continue to need to happen. But as enterprise IT, I see that there are two areas enterprise IT need to continue to become stronger and continue to own is the platform, because it's not a one tool, it's not a one model. Providing that ecosystem, I'm calling it as a platform approach to that, like the way that AWS platforms do combine multiple things that are needed and make them automated, make them connected. I think our role is going to increase in the enterprise IT to do that, number one. Putting the right guardrails around that from a security and policy, I think, Tolga, I think it definitely your realm of governance, policy, and information controls that are required. I think that's where enterprise IT is going to probably shift more into than developing every widget. The widgets might be coming from any part of the organization or from the different vendor products that we see and use today for business processes.
Yep, definitely. I think the couple of things you mentioned there is important. Consumerization of what we have today. I think that's the driver. Now there's no turning back. This is happening. It's a reality. And as business IT leaders, we just need to look forward, and it's only going to get better. Or the models are going to improve, so the value proposition will get better. So we need to take an action. So that's the reality. It's one of those milestones or inflection points, just like smartphones or internet, right? However you look at it. So you have to realize, as a business IT leader, you have to do something, because again, there's no turning back. Okay, so let's talk about because I mentioned, right, most of the tools platforms out there, it's not something you do yourself, right? There's that reliance on third-party vendors and all that, because it makes sense. There's no point reinventing the wheel. So what is your best advice in terms of vendor selection, testing, implementation of Gen AI based solutions?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think as I think about this question, one thing that you had mentioned from the last question is it's really tough to show the ROI. It's challenging right now to, there's so many models that are out there that have been designed over the years, and so we have a very set standard for the platform, for the resources that we have available. But as we talk about AI, and I think Shravan just did a great job in talking about curiosity. And as we think about that curiosity, as we go explore that more, it gets more and more challenging, because now we're breaking some of those models. So how do we continue to show that ROI? That can be challenging. And so I think it's important that we come together as an organization and not just individual business units, and really think about that curiosity, and how do we get to something fairly quickly, so we can start to prove it out and start to show the ROI, like we're on the right track, as opposed to, okay, we're going to build this giant thing, and then in 4 years we'll be able to show the ROI. I don't think it's going to work that way. I think it's going to be go a lot faster than that. One of the other challenges as far as selecting vendors that I've run into is because this is such a new territory, I've actually had vendors that have gone under. They're kind of the fly-by-night vendors, if you will, and so that becomes challenging, because you've invested all this time in setting up a POC, a proof of concept with a particular vendor, and then it turns out that they can't quite meet the mark, they can't meet the minimum viable requirements, or they fold because it was a great concept, but they didn't have the capital to be able to sustain themselves. So that's one of the other challenges that I see with picking vendors. And so how do you, in this market, You've got IBM, Microsoft, whoever it may be. You've got the big boys, but then you also have a lot of startups. Siobhan talked about some of the boards that he's on for startups as well. You've got all of these startups that are. How do you trust them enough to be able to do business with them? That can be an ongoing challenge that I think we're going to see in this space for some time. And then I think those are some of the biggest things that I think about as I think about the vendor selection and who I want to go with. Obviously, you've got the big boys like I talked about, Salesforce or IBM or Microsoft who are out there and they're delving into this as well. And Google, they're really showing that they're able to accomplish these things. So sometimes those might be a little bit safer choices as you're choosing vendors.
Yeah. Again, it's an agility, right? Sometimes larger players, they don't take action quickly. Smaller players might take better action. But anyway, so regardless of that, Sherwan, what do you think about the vendor selections?
Yeah, I know, Chris, I think a wonderful point, and Tolga, I think about the agility and the flexibility of the vendors based on the size, right? But I think this time I see it to be very different. Even the biggest vendors don't have a choice than continuously moving very quickly. The innovation cycle, the release cycle in this one is so fast-paced that we have never seen in the history of technology so far, right? The innovation is happening so quickly. Every 6 months, there is a significantly new model, not just another dot release coming out. These are with significantly, I think right now for the next 10 years, I see that there is, I mean, I was at a Silicon Valley Summit last week where venture funds have brought together a portfolio of companies and a lot of the big tech also together. They're talking about their innovation pipeline is at least 10 years. There is still a significant work to be done. So with that in mind, what I would suggest and what I learned and what I would suggest is do not bet on one single large language model or one single vendor. I think that's again, if you're going to be all in on ChatGPT or all in on the Gemini or all in on Anthropic, you're not going to be, because they are constantly increasing, improving, because this is at the early stages. So taking the approach of more platform approach as a gateways that which provide opportunity to run your use cases against multiple models at a basic level, number one. I think that's so like AWS as a bedrock, as a platform. I mean, it's not their model, it's a gateway. I mean, Databricks has something they call it Lakehouse AI. I mean, whatever the branding there is, everybody, even Microsoft started really thinking about beyond the open AI, trying to create a more of a gateway type of approach that which gives you opportunity to go after multiple large language models, but as well as plugging in other AI vendors. So that's one way to kind of, I would say at this point, to probably still leveraging every capability, but not binding to one, number one. Number two, these major platforms will continue to become almost a platform and a utility, a grid, right? And if you take the electric companies example, they become the grid. They're not the end applications, which is, I was just sitting on yesterday, 2 days ago, on a pitch from about 5 companies, part of the Argyle AI advisory. They've created, I know that a lot of people can go generate the annual reports for the company and the regulatory filings using the generative AI, but trying to do that in the internal company and playing with that versus people are creating, there are 3 companies that I've been aware of that have significantly done that with a one click. They're able to create those kind of outputs. So start looking at the endpoint usages to be where you can experiment, and then coming to the vendors like the Salesforce and the Workdays and the ServiceNows and others that who incorporate that. So I think it's a layered approach to take that. I mean, taking a gateway approach at a platform level so you can leverage the power of all the innovation happening with the big techs, with the SaaS platforms, leveraging that to do what they do best, but also experiment and go out on a point-by-point solutions which plug in and do that. So that's at least a tiered approach that I am taking, and that's what I'm seeing and while talking to other people.
Okay, great. Well, we're running out of time, but let me just hear your last sentences in terms of for the last question. What is next before we transition to questions? Just one sentence. What do you think is next in AI, in general business, society, IT? Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate the question. I think Shravan really wrapped it up well with curiosity earlier. I think that that's going to be the important thing. Us as IT leaders and IT practitioners, we need to be curious about the technology. We need to be using it on a regular basis, generative AI, and seeing how it can help us so that we can then let the business units know how it is helping us and how it may be able to help them in the future. So I think that curiosity will be so important for the future.
Great. Sherwan?
Yeah, I think today generative AI or AI is just using at a task level. They do very, very well. I think from there to more agents and agents connected to systems. So that's what I see the next. So meaning we all need to get prepared to really leverage and create that kind of orchestrations across the company.
Great, thank you. So we have some questions, interesting. And so first question is, obviously, EU, the question is, EU is leading governance. We talked about governance. Do you think the US is lagging in this space, and letting companies innovate, right, will lead to larger problems? And there's an instance where the audience says that they heard a news teenager committed suicide after interacting with a chatbot. So what do you think in terms of this governance in US versus European, and the implications that someone committed suicide after with a conversation with a chatbot? Any of you?
Tolga, I think with any technology, right, when it comes initially, I think none of the technology companies or anybody is looking at this to be for harmful purposes. But I think responsible AI is going to be important, right? Responsible AI at a platform level, responsible AI at a next set of application level, and putting the right set of controls, meaning not having a certain type of, yes, the chatbots, the large language models can generate any type of answer to any question, but this is where I think this is what both Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic was talking on the stage last week is they started actually limiting certain things of biological weapon creation, these kind of scenarios to be that they're capable of generating it, but they're not going to provide that kind of an output. They're going to throttling it. So they started putting at a platform level some throttling capabilities, just the way that in a physical products and in the e-commerce, you want to avoid the raw material needed for explosive making and others to be reduced or monitored. So I think that is needed. More governance is definitely needed. I wouldn't say US is lagging. I think US is taking a different approach in a measured approach in terms of leading the innovation, but they're also embedding and inviting the tech companies to be part of this regulation. I think it's a long way to go. That's going to be the, I'm sure, I think we should have talked about this to be part of the, what is next for AI. Next for AI is significantly regulation and the responsible AI.
Exactly. Chris, what do you think?
Tolga, we have a lot of great questions from the audience. Thanks to the audience for bringing them in. Please continue as we have.
Of course, that's right. So
we flip to the next question?
Yes, definitely. So one question is about the misconceptions or fears that you think companies have when they consider the generative AI for cost reduction. This is about the expectations. What are the misconceptions or fears?
Yeah, as I think about the fears, I think the one that's in the media a lot is the fear of losing your job. AI is going to steal my job. I don't feel that that's true. I think it's just like any other technology. I think that jobs are going to shift, and so your job may be slightly different than what you have today. But at least what we have today with AI, it's really going to be an enhancement of your position. And so, yes, we may expect as leaders in organizations, we may expect more output from individuals because they do have that capability with the enhancement of an AI bot with them. But I don't think that's I think that that's the biggest fear that I hear is all the time. What is this going to do to my job? How is it going to affect it? Am I still going to have a job? I do think that there are going to be jobs that may go away. But again, those jobs are just going to shift into something else because I'm sure you guys see it across the country and across the world. There is a labor shortage in specific positions. And so I think AI is going to be able to help in some of those positions and therefore shift into more knowledge workers for the future.
Thank you. Sherwan, any input?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's the biggest thing is the shift. I think one other thing which is positive for is this cycle. This is easy to learn for many folks. So, for instance, I mean, again, I was talking to one of the gentlemen. His daughter is doing English major, but she's also saying that, hey, mom, I'm learning prompt engineering because looks like the English skill sets are actually needed to get the better output from. Look at it that way. That is one example. This girl who's attending college now in the junior year is already recognized that she can be in the AI revolution as well. So I think there is a lot of ways that this has that accessibility and learnability and the democratization is actually going to help that shift that Chris, I think you rightly pointed out.
Great, thank you. So again, the return on investment, I think, is a good area. So there are questions about it. There are two questions. I'm going to combine them. So one is basically, how can we measure the success of our AI-driven initiatives, the return on investment, and what are the key factors evaluating those potential return on investment for specific platforms combined together? Chris?
Yeah, I think, as we went through the presentation, kind of touched on this a little bit. I think the important thing is to go quickly and to do it in an agile format so that we have small iterative wins as opposed to one large waterfall project where we're trying to accomplish something and we may or may not get to the finish line due to cost, resources, whatever it may be. So I think that agile approach is going to be really important for AI in the future so that we can see those iterative. We're in a new frontier, and so we're going to have to rewrite some of the policies, some of the procedures that we're doing, and so we don't know what all of that is going to look like today. So getting there quickly is going to be important so that we can show those small wins and we can pivot off of those wins.
Sure.
Totally, Chris. I think investments on the platforms and the tooling should not be counted into the ROI because that is almost like your infrastructure you need to establish. Use case by use case, what are you spending? Or how are you able to provide? If you're talking about a use case which is doing some kind of a summarization and search capability or content generation, look at it what the cost will be. I think looking at it that way, Chris, to your point, will continue the innovation and not put a burden on the first ones coming to the use cases or first few which need to bear the burden of 800% negative ROI to rather more innovation and power that can happen.
Great. Well, this was a great, very useful, exciting discussion topic. Again, I really enjoyed it. So there's that value proposition. Obviously, there are cultural elements. Change management is a big, item. Governance elements, business expectations, how we create value, operational privacy, security. So all those things. But again, lots to consider. So very, exciting discussions going forward. I think we'll definitely continue to have these discussions because it's only going to get more. We're going to get better value out of these. Thank you for joining to our discussion event, and hopefully you got some value out of it. With that, Vicky, it's back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tolgay, Shervan, and Chris for such a timely and practical discussion. What a wonderful discussion today. Some wonderful takeaways. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you again, panelists. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win a prize. And our next session will begin at 12:25 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be a fireside chat titled Future Proofing AI, Adobe's Blueprint for Secure and Responsible Adoption. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be directed to that session. We look forward to seeing you there.